The radioactive accident of Ciudad Juarez. Imagine that the shelter you call home, the walls that protect you, are actually what has taken your life away. Imagine waking up every morning beneath a roof that does not only hold your memories, but also hides a silent threat. A threat with no smell, no color, no visible shape. Something that does not knock on the door, does not break windows, does not arrive with fire or smoke. It is simply there, hidden in the concrete, sleeping inside the steel rods, breathing with you from within the walls. Now let us travel to Ciudad Juarez in 1983. Night falls over dusty streets. An old pickup truck moves slowly, loaded to the edge with scrap metal in the back. Rusted pieces are piled together, pipes, wires, metal plates, fragments of a machine that once belonged to the world of medicine. But among all that dead metal, something is still dangerously alive. The truck shakes with every bump in the road. Metal hits metal. And then, without anyone noticing, small shining spheres begin to fall. They roll across the truck bed. They bounce onto the pavement. They disappear into the dirt. They look harmless, almost beautiful, like tiny metallic beads lost among the trash. Anyone could have picked them up. A child could have placed one in a pocket. A worker could have swept them aside without thinking. A neighbor could have seen them shine under the sun and kept walking. But those little spheres were not trash. They were Cobalt 60. And they were releasing deadly radiation. There were no sirens, no police closing the streets, no scientists in protective suits running against time. Only an old pickup truck moving through the city, leaving behind an invisible trail. A trail no one could see, but one that could kill. Welcome to Echoes of Shadows. Today we tell a story of negligence that contaminated an entire country. Before uncovering the secret, subscribe and activate the bell so you do not miss our next echoes. Leave a like if you believe reality is stranger than fiction, and tell us in the comments, can you imagine if your own house became your tomb? Because this is not an urban legend. This is not a story invented to scare you. This happened. And the most terrifying part is not only that it happened once, but that for months almost no one knew death was traveling in silence through roads, junkyards, factories, and homes. The fatal mistake. It all began with a medical machine. A radiotherapy unit designed to treat cancer ended up abandoned, forgotten, turned into an inconvenient object inside an institution. But this was not just any machine. Inside it was a radioactive source of Cobalt 60, a material capable of saving lives when used under strict control, but capable of destroying them when placed in the wrong hands, and that is exactly what happened. The machine left a system that was supposed to protect it. It was taken from a place it should never have left. It was sent away as scrap, as if it were nothing more than old iron, as if its radioactive heart did not exist, as if ignoring danger could make it disappear. But danger does not disappear just because someone closes their eyes. It reached a scrapyard. Workers saw it as one more heavy piece, difficult to move, valuable for the metal it contained. No one imagined that inside that shielded head there was a source designed to emit intense radiation. No one knew they were standing in front of a capsule of death. Then the dismantling began. Blows, cuts, the sound of tools. Metal opening. The head of the machine broke and its contents were exposed. Suddenly, thousands of small Cobalt 60 spheres scattered among the scrap. Around 6,000 tiny pellets escaped into the world without control, mixing with metal pieces, falling into the bed of a truck, getting trapped among rusted iron. That was the moment. There was no explosion, no toxic cloud covering the city. No dramatic scene warning everyone. There was only ignorance. And a radioactive source broken in silence. People kept working, the scrap kept moving, the pieces kept being sold, and the Cobalt 60 began its journey, hidden among metal remains. like a curse no one knew how to name.
The invisible spread. The contaminated scrap did not stay still. It was sent to foundries. There, under extreme heat, the metal was melted, mixed, and transformed. What had once been loose pieces became new steel. And inside that steel, hidden like a disease without diagnosis, the Cobalt-60 remained trapped. Then came the next stage. The production of construction rebar, that common everyday material used to build houses, buildings, walls, workshops, and structures. Something thousands of people see every day without fear, something that represents construction, progress, family property, and the future. But that rebar did not carry the future. It carried radiation. The poison spread through more than half the states of Mexico, hidden inside the walls of thousands of homes. The worst part was that no one could see it. Trucks crossed highways loaded with contaminated material. Workers unloaded steel rods with bare hands. Builders placed them one after another. Concrete covered them. Walls rose. Families moved in. And the radiation was sealed inside with them. A house is supposed to be a refuge, but some became invisible cages. A father came home from work and sat down for dinner without knowing the wall behind him was releasing dangerous energy. A mother rocked her child beside a contaminated wall. A child slept every night beneath a structure that should never have been there. Days passed, routines continued, and in the background a terrible question began to take shape. How many people were exposed? How many became sick without knowing why? How many doctors treated symptoms without imagining that the cause was inside the patient's own home? Radiation does not knock on the door. It leaves no footprints on the floor. It does not stain the hands. It does not warn you when it enters the body. It simply passes through. Through clothing, through skin, through flesh, through bone. And while people believe they are safe, the damage may already be happening deep inside them, cell by cell, in silence.
The discovery. The disaster could have remained hidden for much longer. But the truth appeared in an almost absurd way. It was not a Mexican investigation that first uncovered the scale of the problem. It was not a citizen complaint. It was not a routine inspection. It was a truck that, without knowing it, was carrying contaminated material and passed near a laboratory in the United States. That place had radiation detectors, machines trained to hear the invisible. When the truck came near, the alarms went off. A sound broke the normality. Something was wrong. Something was traveling by road with radiation that should not have been there. Specialists inspected the cargo. They found contaminated rebar. And then came the question that would change everything. Where did this metal come from? The trail led back to Mexico, to Ciudad Juárez, to scrap yards, to foundries, to distributors, to buildings already under construction, to houses where people were living without suspecting that their walls could be irradiating them. The disaster came to light months after it had begun. But by then, the metal had already reached many places. It had already been sold. It had already been installed. It had already been covered with concrete. It was already part of homes and structures where life continued as if nothing had happened. Authorities began to search, to measure, to track, to confiscate, to demolish. Every steel rod was a clue. Every truck was a possibility. Every construction site was a threat, but time was against them because once contamination mixes with commerce, construction, and daily life, it is no longer easy to contain. It becomes a network. It becomes a rumor. And the fear began to grow. Is my house contaminated? Does my school have that rebar? Is my neighbor's wall releasing radiation? Was my family exposed? For many, the questions were impossible to answer. And when an invisible threat enters everyday life, even the walls seem to watch you.
The echo today, in the desert of Samalayuca, a part of this story was buried. An arid, isolated place where the wind lifts dust and silence feels heavier than the earth. There, people spoke of a cemetery, but not an ordinary one. It was not a cemetery of names carved into stone or flowers fading under the sun. It was a cemetery of metal. The cemetery of Samalayuca. Tons of contaminated material were taken there, rebar, fragments, scrap, pieces of a tragedy no one wanted near by authorities tried to confine the danger. Move it away from the city. Bury it under layers of earth, as if the desert could swallow the guilt. But some things do not disappear when they are buried. They simply remain waiting. The cemetery of Samalayuca became the symbol of a wound that never fully closed, a reminder that negligence does not end when the material is collected. It does not end when the alarms stop. It does not end when authorities say the danger is under control. Because doubts remain. The affected remain. The names that never appeared in any record remain. The people who lived near the contaminated truck remain. The workers who touched the metal without protection remain. The families who lived inside contaminated structures without knowing remain. The sick who may never have received an explanation remain. And one dark question remains. How many victims never knew they were victims? That is one of the cruelest parts of this story. Not every tragedy has a clear face. Not every victim falls at the same time. Some simply begin to fall ill later. Some feel weakness, pain, fear. Some visit doctors. Some receive diagnoses that seem to come from nowhere. But nothing comes from nowhere. Sometimes the cause was inside a truck, inside a tiny sphere, inside a steel rod, inside a wall, inside an irresponsible decision made by someone who never measured the consequences. The silence around the victims weighs as heavily as the buried metal. Because a nation can count recovered tons, inspected structures, and affected states, but it cannot always count the suffering left scattered behind. That suffering does not appear completely in official reports. It lives in memory, in rumors, in families who still wonder, in demolished homes, in land marked by a story many would rather forget.
The radioactive accident of Ciudad Juárez reminds us of something frightening to accept. Progress, when handled without responsibility, can become an eternal curse. A machine created to fight cancer ended up bringing danger to innocent people. A medical instrument became a source of contamination. A material designed to heal ended up hidden inside the walls of homes that were supposed to protect, and all because of a chain of mistakes. An abandoned machine. A radioactive source ignored. A scrap yard without enough information. A foundry that did not know what it was receiving. A market that kept moving. A society that discovered too late that the invisible can also kill. That is the true shadow. Not only Cobalt-60. Not only radiation. The shadow was negligence. The shadow was believing that danger disappears when no one talks about it. The shadow was allowing a scientific threat to be treated like garbage. Because some mistakes do not stay in the moment when they happen. Some mistakes travel, they melt, they are sold, they are built into the lives of people who never had the chance to choose. And then home stops being home. A wall stops being a wall. Silence stops being silence. It becomes a warning. Ciudad Juárez left behind a story that sounds like horror but belongs to reality.
A story where death did not arrive with a face, but with tiny shining spheres, where danger did not come from the sky or from war, but from human irresponsibility. Where an old pickup truck became the vehicle of one of the most disturbing radioactive contaminations in Mexico. And perhaps that is the darkest lesson. Not all tombs are underground. Some are built with concrete, some have doors and windows, some have kitchens, bedrooms, and patios. Some are called home. And when humanity forgets that science demands respect, that technology demands vigilance, and that negligence also kills, progress stops lighting the path and begins to cast shadows.